Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube and Twitter. I am Bryson Carver. What an unbelievable show we've got for you guys today. I'm so fired up for today. Unbelievable weekend of sports. Baseball season starts. We had the Final Four in the men's and the women's. Both the women's finished yesterday. It was an incredible national championship game between Stanford and Arizona. Incredible finish there at the end. I'm about to get into this Gonzaga UCLA game that we saw on Saturday night, as well as I'm going to predict, of course, tonight is the national championship game. I'm going to predict the Baylor Bears or the Gonzaga Bulldogs to win the national championship. One of the two. I'll predict at the end of the show. Also, Sam Darnold got traded to the Carolina Panthers. I will discuss why that is an amazing trade for Sam Darnold and why it changes virtually nothing with the New York Jets. That is coming up. Also, Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, is hosting Jeopardy tonight, he hinted again that he doesn't see himself finishing his career in Green Bay, and I will discuss why this will be his last season in Green Bay. Predicted this a year ago. 2021 will be Aaron Rodgers' final season as a Green Bay Packer quarterback. I'll get into that later in the show. Also, my Golden State Warriors have lost 7 of their last 8, and I've got a move in mind. That could actually work into getting them back into title contention because, contrary to what my opinion was, doesn't look like just the addition of Klay Thompson is going to do the job. So all kinds of stuff to get into. But UCLA, Gonzaga, for the Final Four. Of course, we saw earlier in the day, Baylor smacked Houston. I predicted Houston to win, and I was dead wrong there. Baylor all tournament has looked amazing. And of course, I'll get into Baylor later in the show. But let's start with, in what was my mind, the greatest semifinal game in a Final Four of all time. It is not the greatest game I've ever seen. The greatest game I've ever seen in the history of college basketball, and this comes close, don't get me wrong. The best game I've ever seen was the 2016 final. Y'all know what I'm talking about. North Carolina, Villanova. The kid Page hits a ridiculous circus shot, three-pointer, with like 5 seconds left to tie the game. Of course, Villanova uses a timeout. Here comes almost a DiVincenzo, Archie Diacono, who was the player of the year that year. He's dribbling up the court. He passes it behind him to Chris Jenkins, who hits a game-winning, buzzer-beating, national championship-winning shot at the buzzer to win it for Villanova. That's the best college basketball game I've ever seen. This one comes darn close because neither team had more than a 7-point lead. Because remember, Gonzaga went up 7 with about 10 minutes or so left. And once they do that, you're kind of expecting them, okay, Gonzaga, they're going to make this run. They're going to kind of, close it out from here, do what they do. They've been incredibly dominant the entire tournament. I actually think Gonzaga winning fairly easily on Saturday night. It was no disrespect to UCLA. They had an unbelievable run up to that point. But my thing was, okay, UCLA has been in multiple overtime games with Michigan State, and then they were, of course, in that one with Alabama. And there's all these tight, of course, they won by a single point against Michigan. I'm like, man, they're in these tight games with very good teams, right? Some people had Alabama winning the whole darn thing. Some people, including myself, had Michigan winning the big dance. So I'm thinking, man, I don't know how they're going to hang in there with Gonzaga. Sure enough, those kids from UCLA, including Tiger Campbell, gritty point guard, right? Ju Zhang, by the way, had the game of his life. 29 points, including, of course, the game-tying shot before what we all saw to end that game. But UCLA's just hanging in there whole game. And it's, of course, the Zags have a 7-point lead with 10 minutes left. And then all of a sudden you look up and there's seconds left. And UCLA's got a shot to win the game. And I didn't think they got the greatest shot. I feel like they kind of took their time. Guy for Gonzaga missed a long three. They pushed it. UCLA did. I thought, not necessarily using the timeout. I know there was some criticism. Hey, they should have used the timeout. I'm always a proponent of, I don't ever use a timeout. Unless there's 3 seconds left and I've got a rebound. If there's 6 seconds left, I'm pushing it. I'm pushing the ball. Unless you need a 3 to tie, I'm pushing the ball. See if you can get a good shot against a defense that is not set during a timeout. And they didn't get the greatest shot. Of course, Drew Timme, who had 4 fouls up to that point, but more importantly, when the foul occurred, there was 0.7 of a second left. Drew Timme, who's going to be, if Gonzaga wins tonight, the most outstanding player in the tournament, he'll be named that. Jalen Suggs is the best NBA-ready player, but Drew Timme has had an incredible NCAA tournament. But he takes the charge, saves Gonzaga's season, and it was a charge. I know there's some debate, hey, no, that was a block. He was outside the restricted area. He was set, legal guarding position. That is a textbook charge. It was a great play by Timme. Game goes to overtime. And then we saw what we saw from that point. Gonzaga goes up 5. And I'm thinking, okay, that this is probably over. Jalen Suggs hit a big three-pointer from straight on. And I'm thinking that was the dagger. And then here comes UCLA that hit a big corner three, tie the game. They get a stop, they come down, and then one of the craziest sequences I've ever seen, forget in college basketball, in any sport. In any sport. Juzang brings it up, shoots a little floater, misses, comes off the front rim, grabs his own rebound, puts it back, tie game, and everybody, if you're a Bruins fan, if you're a Zags fan, if you're a college basketball fan, we were all thinking this is going to double overtime. Gonzaga's not going to get a great shot. They're just going to have to get a heave. And Jalen Suggs, who, by the way, had an outstanding game. People are talking about that game-winning shot, but towards the end of the second half, towards the end of regulation, that block and then perfect bounce pass to Timme for the dunk might have been the play of the tournament, at least up until his game-winning shot. As far as like defense turning into offense, that was incredible considering it comes from a guard. So they push it, and I kind of got to criticize UCLA in this instance. They didn't cut him off. They played defense, but they didn't cut him off to where he would have had to just, maybe one-hand it from half court. No, they let him get, a head of steam, and the bank was open. Whether he intended it, whether he broke in, the bank was open. And a bank-in game-winning three to send Gonzaga to the national championship game. Incredible game. This is why we love March Madness. This is why we love sports. It's for moments like this. So, listen, the people that are out there, and listen, they're all liars. But people that are out there say, "Oh, I'm boycotting sports." First of all, no, you're not. Second of all, if you really are, I'm genuinely sorry for you. I don't know what you could have possibly been doing at 11 o'clock, at least Eastern time, that would have topped seeing that ending. That was incredible. Man. And I listen, I said on Instagram, if you don't follow my Instagram account, that'd be greatly appreciated. You could go and do it right now at Carving Up Podcast. I said right after the game is I have one question at the end of all of this. How on earth does the national championship top what we saw on Saturday night? Really, I think we're in for a great game tonight. I'll give you one spoiler alert for my prediction later. We're in for an outstanding basketball game tonight. But I don't know how it tops the game that we just saw. Really. You had some people, you have your people that, maybe aren't college basketball fanatics that, some people are under the impression, hey, this won the national championship because it was so intense. And it gets the Final Four, but it had national championship type energy to it. And it's like, no, we got one more game. And listen, man, if tonight tops Gonzaga UCLA, then it will be the greatest college basketball game of all time. For real, it will be the greatest college basketball game of all time if it tops what happens Saturday night. Just incredible. And listen, I know Jalen Suggs is getting some momentum to possibly be the most outstanding player of the tournament. And listen, if he has another great game tonight, he's got a shot. I still think it's Drew Timme because he's been the most consistently good player for the Zags throughout the entire tournament. But a case can be made that Jalen Suggs is the number 1 overall pick. I love Cade Cunningham, but this kid's special. First of all, he's an amazing athlete. He was the top quarterback in the state of Minnesota back in high school. And I've seen his highlights. He reminds me a little bit of Lamar Jackson. Just stupid athletic, could sling it, mobile. And then you look at this, of course, the whole season, and then the tournament. It's like, yeah, this dude's NBA ready. He's one and done. I believe he's the highest. I could be wrong about this, but I think he's the highest recruit in Gonzaga history. So good for Mark Few, who's one of the 3 best coaches in the sport. Good for a great program, which Gonzaga is. And it's amazing to think that this program's never won a national championship. And they were close back in 2017. They played North Carolina, came down to the wire, and North Carolina just kind of pulled away at the end. And they're going to get a shot tonight to make history, to knock off Baylor, to have the first undefeated season in 45 years in college basketball. Hasn't been done since the Bobby Knight coached Indiana Hoosiers. Since then, since 1976, there has been no undefeated champions. Tonight, we could witness history. And hey, listen, don't we all love history? What we saw Saturday night was incredible. It is why I love sports. It is why we all love sports. It is why people don't even watch sports get plugged in the way they do. Just amazing. So, again, I'll get into Gonzaga, Baylor to close the show. But I got to transition to something that broke about a couple hours before this show went live. Is Sam Darnold was traded to the Carolina Panthers. Now, first of all, this is our 5th quarterback move, really, if you think about it, of the offseason. Our 5th big quarterback move. And listen, Adam Schefter, the night of the Super Bowl, I remember early in the day, it's Super Bowl Sunday, February 7th, and he's saying, you guys have no idea. This is going to be a crazy offseason when it comes to quarterbacks. And sure enough, before that, even before the Super Bowl, Matt Stafford traded from the Lions to the Rams. I believe the Rams today are the second best team in the NFC to Tampa Bay because they clearly got an upgraded quarterback. And poor Jared Goff, who I have my questions about. Jared Goff gets traded to the Detroit Lions, the Detroit biting the guys who are going to bite everybody's kneecap, I guess, according to their new head coach Dan Campbell. So my condolences to Jared Goff for getting traded over there. But then you have Carson Wentz traded to the Indianapolis Colts, and it's I've been as big of a Carson Wentz critic as anybody, but I think it could work. Super Bowl contenders, no, but playoff team, division champs, win a playoff game, sure, absolutely. If he can correct his mistakes. Then you have my man Dak Prescott, who finally got his money from the Dallas Cowboys. And now this. Sam Darnold was traded by the New York Jets to the Carolina Panthers for a 6th-round pick and from this year's 6th-round pick and a 2nd and 4th-round pick in 2022. So this is pretty much official now, according to multiple sources telling Adam Schefter. Now, first of all, as far as the Jets are concerned, and I'll get to Sam Darnold, but I'll start with the Jets. This all but ensures that Zach Wilson is going 2nd overall. This ensures Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 to Jacksonville. Zach Wilson is going number 2 to the New York Jets. And I know Jets fans, some at least, hate Sam Darnold, and he's trash, and he turns the ball over, and he's inconsistent. And they're all excited about Zach Wilson. And by the way, talent-wise, Zach Wilson might be the 2nd best quarterback in the draft, of course, to Trevor Lawrence. I like Zach Wilson. But just if you're a Jets fan, or even an NFL fan, if you're a Jets fan, just ask yourself this question. When it comes to the greatest quarterbacks of all 32 franchises, like if we sat down and we might do on the show, later this offseason, who knows? This actually sounds like a good topic. If we sat in a room and we say, okay, here's the best quarterback of every single NFL team in their history. There's some obvious ones like New England. Come on. Denver, Elway, Miami, Dan Marino, Indianapolis, Peyton Manning. But then you'd have some like Dallas. Is it Aikman or is it Staubach? Or Green Bay? Is it Rodgers or is it Favre? Like there's some. But then one of the teams where it's like, okay, this one's obvious is like if you're a Jets fan and I ask you who's the best quarterback in the history of your franchise, you'd say Broadway Joe Namath, right? Of course, Joe Namath. And listen, first of all, you'd be right. You would be right. Joe Namath has a losing NFL record. Do you know that? Joe Namath, great quarterback, has a losing NFL record. So that's not a knock on Joe Namath, by the way. It's just to say the Jets are not exactly known for developing quarterbacks. Chad Pennington out of Marshall, right? You had the two great offensive players coming out of Marshall. You had Chad Pennington and you had Randy Moss. Now, of course, we saw what Randy Moss turned out to be one of, in my view, Randy Moss is the third greatest receiver of all time. I think it's Jerry Rice, T.O., Randy Moss. Those are the three greatest receivers of all time in my view. And then you had Chad Pennington, who goes to the Jets. And he's got talent, but injuries, and again, Jets aren't good at developing quarterbacks. And then listen, Mark Sanchez, we can say what we want about Mark Sanchez. Butt fumble, Mr. Butt Fumble. He had talent coming out of USC. But even, and by the way, people say, well, what? He went to back-to-back AFC championship games. Rex Ryan was a defensive coach, right? And Rex Ryan's a great defensive coach, but he's not an offensive specialist. And so Mark Sanchez never truly got to develop in the Jets organization. And so we go years and years, and then here comes Sam Darnold out of USC, third overall pick, 2018. And it didn't work. And Sam Darnold is a guy that I think is really talented. And again, I'll get to Sam in just a second. So who are we to believe? Because the Jets have had talented quarterbacks in their history. Heck, they had Brett Favre at one point. Now, I get an older Brett Favre, but that didn't really work. I think they were 7-5, 12 games into the season, and they might have finished like 8-8 or something. So it kind of nosedived. It took a nosedive in November and December. And so who am I to believe that Zach Wilson is going to be a home run with the Jets? I think he's really talented. I've seen his film at BYU. He's a very, very talented player. And I think if he was going to San Francisco, who we all know San Francisco's history, they make every quarterback work. Kyle Shanahan makes every quarterback work. I think he could be special, like Pro Bowler. But with the Jets, it's different. Like where you get drafted, man, it matters. Like it really does. Like if you go to a dumpster fire, it hinders your growth. Like, I mean, listen, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. He is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. The arm angles, the mobility, right? The arm, the accuracy. And he's great. Getting drafted by Kansas City and Andy Reid sure did help. And that's not discrediting Pat Mahomes. I just said he's the best quarterback in the league. But if he'd gotten drafted by the Jets, he'd be really good. They might make the playoffs, but he wouldn't be as good in New York as he would be in Kansas City. I mean, everybody knows that. So that's what I'm saying about Zach Wilson. That's why I am skeptical, not of Zach Wilson, but of the situation he's going to end up in. Like Trevor Lawrence, let's say the Jets didn't blank up at the end of the 2020 season and inexplicably win that game on the road against the Rams and then beat the Cleveland Browns the very next week to ensure that they would not be drafting one of the most talented quarterbacks coming out of college, if not the most talented quarterback coming out of college of all time, in Trevor Lawrence. And they're stuck with the number 2 pick. But had they not done that, had they not just lost their marbles again, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence could even. Maybe he could. I think Trevor Lawrence would be a home run. And it's not like he's going to a beautiful situation in Jacksonville. I mean, it's not like they, outside of like 1 year, 2017, have a history of championship contention. But I think, listen, Urban Meyer's made some bad decisions to start. So I don't know if that will work or not. But I think in the long run, Trevor Lawrence is going to work in Jacksonville for many reasons. But could Trevor Lawrence turn the Jets around? Again, like Mahomes, I think he could get him to the playoffs. But would he be able to overcome all the obstacles and get them into championship contention? Because listen, it's not like the Jets have a history of winning championships either. They haven't won since Super Bowl III, which was the first Super Bowl that was called a Super Bowl. The first two Super Bowls were just called the AFL NFL championships before the two leagues emerged. The Super Bowl III was the first one called the Super Bowl. It's been that long, 1969, since the Jets have won anything. They haven't even been to the Super Bowl since. So it is still, though, in New York. And we all know New York fans, like Philly fans, or not Philadelphia Phillies fans, but just Philadelphia fans in general, like Boston fans, like LA fans, Miami fans. Like maybe I wouldn't put Miami in there, but those cities expect you to win. Dallas, they expect you to win. Like those fans can be tough. And so listen to the Jets, they have New York is always split. There's Giants fans, there's Jets fans, and it's up to the Jets to try not screw this up. Now, I do like their head coach hire of Robert Saleh, who I thought should have gotten a job a year ago. But I don't know if this works with Zach Wilson. It's not because of Zach Wilson. It's similar to what I was saying about Joe Burrow last year. I know y'all were killing me saying I'm a Joe Burrow hater. I'm like, no, I'm really not. I like the kid. I think he is talented. I just think he's going to an organization in Cincinnati that is poorly run, can't put an offensive line around him, can't put a defense to back him up, and can't give him a solid running game. Joe Mixon had a down year and can't give him a great coaching staff. And we saw that cost Joe Burrow his season, midway through. He suffers a serious knee injury. And so that's why I am skeptical about Joe in Cincinnati. He can play. He already proved that. I just don't know if they could put the adequate talent around him, because we all know it doesn't matter who you are. You need help to win. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league, didn't have his offensive line, and he struggled mightily in the Super Bowl. So it doesn't matter who you are. Now to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, coming out of college, this is the God's truth. He was my number 2 quarterback coming out in 2018. My number 1, ironically, was Josh Allen. And Josh Allen had a bad rookie year. He was terrible. I mean, he was awful in 2018. He made strides in 2019. The Bills got to the playoffs. And then last year, he was, in my mind, the third place guy for MVP. I thought it was Rodgers, Mahomes, Josh Allen. He was that good last year. And Baker Mayfield, I thought he was certainly talented and deadly accurate with the football. But I thought leadership issues, crazy immature coming out of Oklahoma. So that put him around my third best quarterback. I like Sam Darnold at 2. And see, I heard a lot of Jets fans say, Sam Darnold turns the ball over too much. He's inconsistent. And my response is this. And this is why I think it is going to work beautifully for him in Carolina. First of all, he's going to a coach I love, Matt Rule. Matt Rule in college, everywhere he went, he won. And Matt Rule was kind of Urban Meyer 2.0 in that he goes to a program that's kind of in shambles and doesn't just turn them around, turns them around immediately. He goes to Temple. What is Temple doing? And they're out here winning 10 games. And then Baylor was in, they all had all kinds of scandals. Art Briles got fired, and it was a train wreck at Baylor. And they darn sure weren't winning games in the field as a result of all that. And Matt Rule comes in, and within 2 to 3 years, Baylor's playing for the Big 12 championship, and I think it's a spot in the college football playoff at one point. He was that successful that quickly. And so going to Carolina, I think he's going to work great there. Secondly, and this has always been my belief, Sam Darnold, he would probably fit in the Bruce Arians scheme. No risk it, no biscuit. Sam Darnold takes big risks. But I would rather, let's put it this way. If you're a coach, this is why I think Jameis Winston is going to succeed in New Orleans under Sean Payton, under a smart coaching staff. Same with Sam Darnold in Carolina. If you're a guy who takes big risk as a quarterback, and you're throwing a lot of interceptions, that can be coached out of you. But, and see, I hate to throw this guy's name out because he had one of the all-time great comebacks we've ever seen in sports, Alex Smith. But if you're Mr. Play It Safe guy, Mr. Check Down guy, it's hard to coach a guy into taking big risks. It's easier to reel a guy back Sam Darnold than to coach a guy into taking big risks, a guy like Alex Smith. That's why, so he's going to Matt Rule, smart coaching staff. By the way, Joe Brady is there. Do you not know that name, Joe Brady? Well, you should, because Joe Brady was at LSU with Joe Burrow. And all Joe Burrow did was throw 60 touchdown passes. LSU might have been the greatest college football team ever, and Joe Burrow had the greatest season of any college quarterback ever. Now, of course, give Joe Burrow a ton of credit for that, but Joe Brady did an outstanding job. He was the passing game coordinator at LSU. Did an outstanding job with Joe Burrow. He's in Carolina. So you got Matt Rule and you got Joe Brady to help develop Sam Darnold. Now, also something else to mention with the Carolina Panthers is what happens to Teddy Bridgewater now. Because Sam's going to come in. He's going to have a whole offseason to learn the system in Carolina. He's not going to be the backup to start the season. Like if this was a trade made like a week before the season started, because we've seen those, right? A quarterback gets traded like during training camp sometimes or right before the season because of an injury. And they usually sit him for a week or 2 weeks just to give him time to get up to speed to the system. And that's not going to be the case with Sam Darnold because you give him a full off season and, training camp, and he will emerge as the better quarterback. He's in that group. I always say he's in the group with Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton. I think Jameis Winston is going to move out of this group, but today Jameis Winston's in that group. Low-end starter, high-end backup. That's the group Teddy Bridgewater's in. Like, he can come in. Look what he did with the New Orleans Saints. Right? Drew Brees goes down in week 2 a couple of years back against the Rams. We're thinking, oh, boy, the Saints are in trouble. And Teddy Bridgewater, win, 5-0 in Drew Brees' absence. So, listen, you put the adequate talent around him, he can win you some games. Championships, no. But he can win you some games, and that's valuable. Hey, everybody, listen. There's an old cliche that the most important position in football is quarterback. And the second most important position in football is the backup quarterback. Because if your starter goes down and you got a nobody at backup, then your season's over. And you got no shot. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017 and Carson Wentz, who's having an unbelievable season, goes down, and if you don't have Nick Foles, forget it. You're not winning a championship. But you had Nick Foles. Good backup. And fly, Eagles, fly, and they won the Super Bowl, which I try to forget every day. But they did it. So backup quarterbacks matter, and Teddy holds value. He's a good locker room guy. He's a good leader. Very, very coachable. He will go elsewhere, be a backup to some starter, or maybe a starter in another situation and succeed. Maybe he goes to Jacksonville, right? Maybe he could go to Jacksonville and be somewhat of a mentor for Trevor Lawrence. Be his backup in case, Lord forbid, Trevor Lawrence gets hurt. You have Teddy Bridgewater to come in. So I could see him doing something like that possibly, and mentor a young guy. So that's something else that you need to keep your eye out for, that Teddy Bridgewater's maybe he gets traded during draft weekend, which, as we look at the calendar here, is about 3 weeks from now. Let's see. That would be on March the 29th. March 29th is the first round of the NFL draft. We could see during draft weekend Teddy Bridgewater get traded, but I think this is great for Sam Darnold. Because, listen, something else to mention is Adam Gase. And Adam Gase has always been so confusing to me because Peyton Manning, who in my view is the third greatest quarterback ever and probably the smartest quarterback of all time, the dude was just ridiculous. Peyton advocated for this guy like crazy, and Adam Gase has been an abject failure as a head coach. We saw him. Look at quarterbacks. Heck, if you're Sam Darnold, look no further than Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill looks like he's okay. He's kind of average, below average in Miami under a bad coaching staff. Then they get Adam Gase, and it just looks worse and worse. And it's like, oh, Ryan Tannehill's, he's a backup. He'll be in the league a couple of years and he'll be out. Ryan Tannehill goes to Tennessee under a really good coaching staff, And the Titans got to the AFC Championship game, and Ryan Tannehill got a lot of money. Like, he can play, right? So if you're Sam Darnold, I think Sam Darnold's more talented than Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill, up until his last year at Texas A&M, was a wide receiver. Sam Darnold's always been a quarterback. So I think, again, every quarterback under Adam Gase looks like hot garbage on the 4th of July. They look terrible. So under this coaching staff in Carolina, Matt Rule, Joe Brady, he's going to flourish. Now, is Carolina going to win the division next year? No. Tampa Bay is going to run away with the division in the NFC South. I don't know what I'm going to get out of New Orleans. Don't love New Orleans. I could see them making the playoffs. Atlanta's out. They're in a rebuild mode. Their defense is awful. Their offensive line is awful. I think they need to take Mekhi Becton, or not Mekhi Becton. I was thinking of the offensive lineman I think the Jets took last year. But the Falcons need to take the offensive lineman out of Oregon. He's just a freak athlete, and I think he's going to succeed in the NFL. But the Falcons are a long way off from being even a playoff team. So Carolina's real competition in the division is New Orleans, because what's New Orleans going to look like without Drew Brees? So again, Tampa Bay is going to win the division, but again, 7 playoff teams, 3 wild card spots. Who's to say Carolina with the talent they have? Christian McCaffrey coming back healthy, a not a great defense, but a talented defense, really good receivers. Robbie Anderson, under the radar, had a 1,000-yard season with Teddy Bridgewater, who is not a big risk taker. So with a guy like Sam Darnold, who is a big risk taker, who does like to push the ball down the field, Robbie Anderson could have a Pro Bowl season next year. Matter of fact, I might predict Robbie Anderson has a Pro Bowl season. He's one of the better deep threats we have in the league. He was with Sam Darnold with the Jets, and they had a really good connection, albeit under, again, Adam Gase. Not a good head coach. So they reunite there. Again, I think Sam Darnold is over time is going to flourish in Carolina. I think the Panthers have found their franchise quarterback post Cam Newton. So good for the Panthers. I think they're a well-run organization. And as far as the Jets, I don't know if this really changes much, because as I detailed, the best quarterback in the history of their franchise, Joe Namath, and he was great, losing NFL record. So the Jets don't have a history of developing talented quarterbacks. So there's that. And I think Zach Wilson's really talented. I think he is the second best quarterback in the draft. But it's the Jets. So I don't know if I see it panning out. Maybe I'm wrong, but history tells otherwise. Okay, so Aaron Rodgers, by the way, about an hour from now, Aaron Rodgers is going to, for the next 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks, Monday through Friday, at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, on NBC, is going to host Jeopardy. Of course, the great Alex Trebek passed away last November. May God rest his soul. But they've had, the guest hosts. I thought Ken Jennings did the best job of the new Jeopardy hosts, the fill-ins that have come in. But Aaron Rodgers is going to host Jeopardy, so I look for him. He's a brilliant guy. He's obviously a very smart quarterback, and he's a very smart human being. I think he's going to flourish on the show. I think he's going to do great. But Aaron Rodgers recently did an interview with Kenny Mayne. Kenny Mayne's great on SportsCenter. He reminds me of. He reminds me of. He's like the Bill Murray of sports talk on SportsCenter. I mean, he just the dry humor. Kenny Mayne's hilarious. But Kenny Mayne was interviewing Aaron Rodgers. Aaron was promoting Jeopardy on SportsCenter, and they did about a 16-minute interview. And of course, it came up because there were the stuff that Aaron was saying last year, and the Packers took a quarterback in the first round last year rather than an offensive skill player that could help Aaron Rodgers, albeit he still won the MVP and got to the NFC Championship game. But Kenny Mayne asked Aaron Rodgers, he said, "Hey, do you still see you finishing your career in Green Bay?" And Aaron's like, "I'll say this year what I said last year. No, I don't. I don't see how that happens." And I will, since Aaron said what he said this year, he said this year what he said last year, I'm going to do the same. Because last year I said, I think Aaron Rodgers has 2 years left in Green Bay before they move on. Because listen, they're not going to just have Jordan Love drafted in the first round and just let his rookie contract expire as the backup. Does that mean they think he's better than Aaron Rodgers? Of course not. Aaron's the second or third best quarterback in the league still at age 36, 37, whatever he is. Okay, so I said last year, 2 years left in Green Bay. This will be his last season with the Green Bay Packers. Now, listen, in fairness, I also said last year, Drew Brees, this is it. 2020 is his last season. Again, this is before the whole controversy that summer. But even before that, I said, I think this is it for Drew Brees. He, kind of didn't play great in some of those playoff games against Minnesota and against the year before that, the Rams in the NFC Championship game. And he's aging. He looks like a 40-year-old quarterback. And so that happened. And I think this is it for Aaron Rodgers. Now, where does he go from here? I could actually see, believe it or not, I could see Chicago as a possible destination. Do what his predecessor in Green Bay did, Brett Favre. I know he, of course, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Brett Favre went to the Jets for a year and then retired. He was like Michael Jordan, retiring 3 or 4 times. But he went to the Minnesota Vikings, division rival, and had arguably the best season of his career at age 40. Now, not that Brett didn't take care of his body, but Aaron takes outstanding care of his body. So who's to say at age 40 that Aaron, maybe he isn't going to be what he is today, but today he's the reigning MVP. Even if he's a lesser version of himself, what's that, 35 touchdown passes? I'll take that. I'll take 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers if that's his numbers over most quarterbacks in the league. I mean, you got to remember, Aaron threw 48 touchdowns. Packers had the number 1 seed in the NFC, and he was the MVP. A slightly lesser version of himself is still a darn good quarterback. Like one of the best quarterbacks in the league still. Just a lesser version of that. So how about Chicago? I got bad news, Bears fans, and I know you already know this. Andy Dalton is not the future. I heard Ryan Pace, the general manager, who's probably going to lose his job at some point during the season, talk about, we like Andy Dalton, we like what he brings us. And for Bears fans, they had heard for weeks, we may get Russell Wilson. I heard that the Bears are thinking about trading for Russell Wilson. And they get Andy Dalton. So there went that ship. And so my guess, and I like Andy Dalton, he's a good quarterback, not far from great, but he's a serviceable guy. But the Bears aren't going anywhere with Andy Dalton. I don't necessarily know if he's an upgrade for Mitchell Trubisky, as crazy as that sounds. I mean, people forget Mitch Trubisky, and I have my doubts about him. The man played great at the end of the season and barely, no pun intended, got the Bears into the playoffs in 2020, where, of course, they lost immediately to the New Orleans Saints. But how about Aaron Rodgers to Chicago? Now, the Bears are going to trade him there, the Packers are going to trade him there. But who's to say Aaron won't force his way out? To say, look, this isn't working. Because, look, I was surprised Aaron Jones stayed with Green Bay because Green Bay is like allergic to paying guys big money. They're like the opposite of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas plays average players great money. Green Bay, outside of Aaron Rodgers, don't even play great players great money. Like they're the opposite of the Dallas Cowboys. And, sometimes you can say that's for better, and sometimes you can say, well, you just let your Pro Bowl offensive linemen walk in free agency, which they did. Just let them walk. And so this is Green Bay's history. And so if we get to the playoffs next year and the Packers are once again the champions of the NFC North, they'll win that division fairly easily. And we get to, say, the divisional round or even, heck, the NFC Championship game, and they run into Tampa Bay and they fall short again. Aaron's like, if y'all aren't going to be aggressive, I got to go somewhere where they are aggressive. And Chicago, they can't for the life of them find a quarterback, but man, they're aggressive. What did they do a few years back with Khalil Mack? Gave up 2 first-rounders to, at the time, the Oakland Raiders for Khalil Mack. And that trade has paid off, it looks like. I mean, Khalil Mack is, I know he had a shaky year this year, but he's been one of the best defensive players in the league for quite a while now. Like, they took that big risk. You tell me they won't go all in to try and get Aaron Rodgers? If Aaron just says, hey, I'm out. Green Bay, there's, similar to what we saw with, or what we're seeing with, Deshaun Watson, or what we saw briefly, and I believe this is more of a leverage thing than an I want out thing, but what we saw with Russell Wilson. And we all know Aaron's got all the leverage in Green Bay. He is the Green Bay Packers. We've seen them without him, and it's not pretty. So that's what we gotta keep in mind here. That if we get to the playoffs and Green Bay loses to a team like Tampa Bay, who is ultra aggressive. I mean, again, Tampa Bay, to me, the reason they had the best free agency, you say, well, they didn't add anybody. They didn't have to. They just kept everybody from the Super Bowl team. They're the first team since 1979 to bring back all the starters from a Super Bowl winning team. That's never happened in over 40 years. Tampa Bay, in a salary cap era, in a free agent era, did that. That's man, give credit to their front office for pulling that off. But if they run into Tampa Bay, if Green Bay runs into Tampa Bay, and it's once again a situation where, Tampa Bay just out-talents Green Bay once again, like they did last year, Aaron's got to sit back and say, oh my God, I just won the MVP, and I'm still throwing for 40 touchdowns, and I'm 37 years old, and I'm still in my prime. And they still can't get enough talent to surround me. They still won't. Free agents aren't going to Green Bay because it's a small town in freezing Wisconsin. But you can trade for guys. Look what the Milwaukee Bucks did. Just look within the state. Look at professional sports teams in the state. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee's like, we can't lure in any free agents, so we'll just trade for some star players. They trade for Drew Holiday, and just the other day, they extend Drew Holiday. They kept their star player. Green Bay just lets their stars walk. They don't care. They're like, okay, bye. And that's cost Aaron Rodgers multiple opportunities at a Super Bowl. It's embarrassing if you think about it for Green Bay that in the last, let's see, when did Brett Favre go? Okay, so in the last 30 years, you've had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and you have 2 rings to show for it in 2 Super Bowl appearances. You've been to the Super Bowl twice in 30 years with those 2 guys at quarterback. Like, listen, it's not how it works. You don't go from Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback. That doesn't happen. Like, usually, look at the Miami Dolphins. Dan Marino retires, and for the last 20 years, they still can't find a quarterback. Like, that's not how it works. And the fact that they've had these 2 guys for 3 decades, and they still just, it's unbelievable. They should have 5, 6, 7 Super Bowls. Having those 2 guys, come on. So I do, and listen, I've been critical of Aaron when it comes to his leadership. I don't think it's like Jay Cutler bad. Jay Cutler might have been the worst leader of any quarterback we've ever seen. It's not that bad, but Aaron's leadership has been in question before. I don't think he has natural leadership qualities. I don't think he's a bad teammate. He's just not a natural leader. He's been a little, what's the word for it? Probably, I guess the word I would use for it is aloof, with the media, with teammates, with coaches. By the way, I can understand why he was aloof with Mike McCarthy. I'll defend Aaron there. Mike McCarthy has been a disaster in Dallas, so I don't blame Aaron Rodgers in that regard. But I got to say, man, I do hold some sympathy for Aaron Rodgers that he's stuck in Green Bay, and and it's not like he's not taking up a big chunk of their salary cap. He's not. Look what Tampa Bay's doing. They kept everybody, and for the most part, everybody got paid, and they still kept everybody. And Green Bay just lets star players walk. Like Aaron Jones was kind of the outlier, but he took less money to stay in Green Bay, so he didn't get the big contract that I guess he thought that he was going to get and probably deserve in free agency. So it's a weird situation in Green Bay, and I think this is it for Aaron Rodgers. After 2021, Aaron will suit up somewhere else in 2022. So Packers fans, get ready. Enjoy number 12. One day, number 12 will never be won again by any other player. We all know that. One day, Aaron Rodgers will come back to Green Bay on a Thanksgiving game, just like Brett Favre did, or on a Sunday night game or whatever against the Chicago Bears or the Vikings or the Lions, a division rival, and he'll get his number retired and he'll get a standing ovation and it'll all be great. But you better enjoy this season because after this is it for Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. This is it. So let's talk about briefly, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. My Golden State Warriors are a mess right now. Now, obviously, after Klay Thompson went down with that devastating Achilles injury, after coming off of a year where he rehabbed from an ACL tear, of course, listen, I'm a Warriors fan, but I'm objective. I was like, okay, thought this was going to be a championship year, but with Klay out, it's just not meant to be. But I said, okay, you still have Steph Curry, top 5 player in the league, greatest shooter of all time. You still have Draymond Green, one of the best playmaking point forwards in the NBA. You have Andrew Wiggins, who's a good scorer. Andrew Wiggins has had a pretty good season, by the way. Yeah, Kelly Oubre in a trade. You have James Wiseman, number 2 overall pick in the draft. You still got Steve Kerr. They can make the playoffs in the West. As a lower seed, as a 6 or 7 seed, they can make the playoffs. That was my prediction, is Golden State will be the 6th seed. And today, they sit as the 10 seed, which, of course, we have the play-in. So just to give yourself a shot at the playoffs, you can be the 10th, as low as the 10th seed, but still have a shot to get in with the play-in format, and we'll get into that as the season goes on about a month and a half from now. But I figured, hey, Golden State's got the talent to make the playoffs. Again, Steph has had an incredible season. He's averaging about 30 a game. He's putting up numbers similar to his numbers when he won unanimous MVP. He's been that good. But Golden State has lost 7 of their last 8 games. Now, Steph hasn't played all of those because he had the tailbone injury that's been bothering him since he came back. But the Warriors are a mess right now. The fouling is out of control. I believe last night in their loss to the Atlanta Hawks, they had more fouls than they did assists. That is a recipe for disaster, and you cannot win if that is on the stat line. If the stat line says you got more fouls than assists, that's not good. I think there's one move at this point because I believed, okay, next year, they'll be championship contenders. Get Klay back from the Achilles. Look at Kevin Durant. By the way, look how great Kevin Durant has been post-Achilles. We look at even a lesser player, Rudy Gay. He was better after he tore his Achilles. Not because of it, of course, but after he tore his Achilles, hey, he was a better player, which goes to, of course, the player's work ethic and to modern medicine, because used to that wasn't the case. So I still believe Klay's going to come back and be Klay Thompson, but I don't know if that's enough. So, and I didn't want to have to reach for this, but I think Golden State has one more option next year to get back into championship contention. Of course, Steph's going to be back. Draymond's going to be back. Klay's going to be back healthy. It'll take Klay a minute to get back into the rhythm of things. That's fine. That's normal. He hasn't played basketball. By the time next season starts, he won't have played basketball in over 2 years. But that won't be. They'll be about a 4 or 5 seed in the West, but that won't be enough to get them to championship contention. Here's what they got to do. First of all, you got to trade Andrew Wiggins to free up cap space. You got to trade Andrew Wiggins to free up cap space because his value will never be better. His value will never be better because there are still teams out there that still like Andrew Wiggins, that still see, what do they call him? Maple LeBron, right? Of course, he's Canadian. Guys, when he's coming out of college at Kansas, compared him to the king himself, LeBron James, which, of course, was a way, way overreach on a guy like Andrew Wiggins. But Andrew Wiggins is having a solid season. He's having the best three-point shooting season of his career. He's having the best season of his career defensively. Block shots. He gets a shot, fairly easily. He's a good mid-range shooter, solid ball handler, gets the rim well, which surprised me a little bit. His trade value in this Golden State system will not be better because once Klay comes back, Wiggins he's going to get the third most shots, and he won't really have a chance to flourish and shine, I guess, if you will, and have his numbers boosted and inflated. His percentages will be better, but points per game, that sort of deal, that won't look as good as it will this season. Trade Andrew Wiggins. Some dummy will pick him up. Scott Pioli, who was the GM of the New England Patriots at the first part of their dynasty, when it was young Tom Brady, Belichick had just gotten hired, and they won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years from 01 to 04. Or yeah, it was 01 to 04. And Scott Pioli had a saying, and it really is smart. He said, of course, we were a well-run organization. We didn't do deals with other well-run organizations because we knew it'd just be a battle. We did deals. We made trades with organizations that were not well-run. Organizations like, at the time, Buffalo or the Cleveland Browns or the Detroit Lions. Notice the Patriots make a lot of deals with the Detroit Lions. Detroit is very poorly run. Like that, there's a reason for that. There's something behind that, and that stuff matters. Golden State is well run. Maybe they make a deal because listen, they made a deal last year to get they traded D'Angelo Russell for Andrew Wiggins, and not only did they get Andrew Wiggins, but they got not New Orleans. They got Minnesota's pick for this year, 2021, this year's NBA draft. So Golden State is going to have a lottery pick again, whether they make the playoffs or not. Golden State themselves won't be in the running with their pick for the number 1 overall pick. But they possess Minnesota's number 1 pick because of the trade for Andrew Wiggins. They could get the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. They did a deal with a poorly run team. So now they use that trade asset where they could get the number 1 overall pick, and somebody is going to or even the number 2 or 3 pick. They got the 2 pick this year. They took James Wiseman. I liked James Wiseman out of college. Thought he was the best player coming out. But they can use this pick. Somebody out there is going to like Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs. And they can say, okay, we'll package this and Andrew Wiggins, and we'll give him to y'all for, I guess, maybe like a bench play or something to free up cap space. And then here's what they can do. You know who's going to be a free agent this year? Kawhi Leonard. Now, will Kawhi Leonard be the best player in the Warriors? Probably. Kawhi Leonard overall is a better basketball player, and I love Steph Curry. He's my favorite player in the league. But overall, Kawhi Leonard is a better basketball player than Steph Curry. But it'll be a similar situation to when Kevin Durant was there. Kevin Durant is not a natural leader, right? He's not. Was he the best player in the Warriors? I thought he was the best player in the world, so of course he's the best player in the Warriors. Steph was the engine that made that team go. And so Kawhi can still be Kawhi, but not have to be the emotional support for the team. Even when he won the championship in Toronto, was he the best player? No question. He had an unbelievable playoff run. I said it over and over on the show. Kyle Lowry was the leader for that team. Kyle Lowry was the engine that made that team go. And so in this case, Steph Curry's I love Kyle Lowry, but Steph Curry's a lot better basketball player than Kyle Lowry is. Steph Curry is a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer, greatest shooter of all time, 3-time champion, 2-time MVP, 1-time, unanimous MVP. Like, he's that dude. Free up cap space, trade Wiggins and a possible number 1 overall pick somewhere else to free up cap space because Wiggins is on a terrible contract. It is one of the worst deals in the league. By the way, let Oubre walk. Oubre's making close to $20 million a year. Kelly Oubre doesn't want to come off the bench. Okay, let him walk. Go get Kawhi Leonard. That's what they got to do. Kawhi can be a free agent this year if he wants to. He's got a player option. And if the Clippers go out in the second round again, or if the Lakers beat them up in the Western Conference Finals, Kawhi is going to look at it and say, okay, I got Pandemic P as my running mate. Is Ty Lue really that guy's head coach? We don't have the greatest bench in the world. We keep running into the Lakers. Nuggets got better. There's this team in the state that's got an established head coach, greatest shooter ever, top 5 shooter ever, and one of the 5 best two-way players in the league, one of the best point forwards in the league in Draymond Green, a young James Wiseman who's getting better. And they got cap space. I can just join that team. That's what I think Golden State has to do in order to get back in championship contention. Otherwise, and this hurts because man, as a Warriors fan, I'll be the first to tell you, I was spoiled. I and every other true Warriors fan. And listen, the good thing about this bad Warriors stretch, including a 53-point loss to the Raptors, not the Lakers. I mean, it'd be embarrassing if it's the Lakers or the Nets. The Raptors. They lost by, at one point they were down 61 points. Now, I know Steph and Draymond didn't play, but come on. A 53-point loss to the Raptors. I'll set that aside now. The good thing about this stretch is it's weeded out all the bandwagons. Listen, with every team that goes on these runs, I personally know a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. As a matter of fact, he's my cousin, for crying out loud. He's been a Bucs fan his whole life. So he is far from a bandwagon. But you had your bandwagon Bucs fans. There's always these people. You always have celebrities that come out of nowhere. Like if they're from a hometown, there's these celebrities that come out of nowhere, and it's like, man, you ain't never been a fan of this team. Where'd you come from? So as a Warriors fan, man, I was spoiled. So this hurts to say. Even if they get Klay Thompson back next year, they could be the 4 seed in the West. Heck, maybe they're the 3 seed in the West. But Denver's just getting better. The Lakers are still going to be there. The Jazz are getting better. And Golden State, listen, they I don't know if they have a bench. Kent Bazemore's been up and down. You look at guys like, of course, thank God, they traded Wanamaker. Nico Mannion's good, but he's young. He still needs to develop. Kevon Looney has trouble staying healthy. Jordan Poole's been a revelation. Jordan Poole's had a really good season, although he has slowed down in the last few. Golden State get Kawhi Leonard. Now, in order to do that, let Oubre walk in free agency, because Kelly Oubre's a free agent. You can let Oubre walk. You can trade Wiggins and that number 1 pick to a team that is willing to take on that contract, which, hey, Golden State was willing to take on that contract. So who's to say someone else isn't? And Andrew Wiggins is playing the best basketball of his career. Like he never played this well in Minnesota. Like, I'm not saying he's like all-star, but he never played this well in Minnesota. He's having the best season of his career in Golden State. So his trade value will never be higher, because once they get Klay back, he'll be in a reduced role. He'll be good, but not what he is this year. Trade Wiggins, trade the number 1 pick to someone else, free up that cap space from that terrible contract, go get Kawhi Leonard, go all out to try and get this guy. That's the only way Golden State can get back into the championship mix next season. As far as this season, I think they'll be in the play-in. I don't have any doubts about that, because keep in mind, Golden State's schedule, I think they said the Warriors' schedule is like the 4th easiest in the NBA moving forward as far as the record of the teams that they're going to be playing. I know in the future they got the Thunder 3 times, they've got the Cavs, they've got the Wizards, they've got winnable games in the future, and teams above them like the Spurs and Memphis, they've got a harder schedule, especially the Spurs, going down the stretch. So Golden State could get in the playoffs, but there's no question they're a one-and-done team. Denver could eliminate them quickly. Portland could. Lakers could. Jazz, Phoenix, they'll be one-and-done in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard, he is the answer. They got to go get Kawhi. Of course, get Klay back healthy next year. That's the only way to get back into championship contention next season. We've seen it work with the Raptors, where he's the best player, but he's not the emotional support. He's not the leader. Kyle Lowry was. Even though Kyle isn't better than Kawhi, he was the leader. We saw last year with the Clippers. The Clippers counted on Kawhi to be their guy, to be their leader, and it fell flat on its face in the second round against Denver. So if he goes to Golden State, he ain't got to worry about being a leader. Steph's got that, and by the way, Draymond's got that. So he wouldn't have to worry about it. So that's my thoughts on the Warriors and their current state right now. It's crazy to think that just 2 years ago they were the overwhelmingly the best team in the league by a country mile, by light years, as their owner Joe Lacob said years back. It's crazy to see 2 years later that they're struggling to just make the playoffs despite Steph going berserk. I mean, last night he had 37 more points, so he's having an outstanding season. Draymond's having a decent season. Andrew Wiggins is having the best season of his career, but it has just not come together this entire year. And maybe they turn it around. I don't know, but they have they haven't shown me that they're just Klay Thompson, a healthy Klay Thompson away from being a championship contender. So go get Kawhi Leonard. That's all I got to say. Now, national championship is tonight. Baylor, Gonzaga. By the way, let me clarify. It is Gonzaga, not Gonzaga. They're called the Zags. Jay Billis, I saw a video on Instagram. He said this earlier today, and I was like, thank you for saying this, Jay. You're so right about this. If you're watching the game with anybody, hopefully playing it safe. We are still in a pandemic. But if you're watching the game with anybody and they say Gonzaga, please respectfully correct them. It is Gonzaga. They're called the Zags, not the Zogs. Okay? So just keep your friendly reminder from carving it up. Now, of course, we all know, as I mentioned early to start the show, Gonzaga is in a position to make history, to be the first undefeated team in college basketball in the last 45 seasons. There's been some close ones. You had UNLV back in 1990, 1991. They came close, but they lost in the Final Four. You had very recently the Kentucky Wildcats with Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker. Of course, Coach Calipari, great head coach, but lost in the Final Four to Wisconsin. So we've had we've had some close ones, but nobody has ever done it since Indiana back in 1976. So, without further ado, again, I'm not going to be biased here. There's no bias here because I said Michigan would win it, and of course, Michigan got beaten the Elite Eight by UCLA. And when I looked at both teams, the Final Four, and of course, the totality of their season, and more importantly than that, the tournament, because we all know the tournament's all that matters. Baylor, Gonzaga, I will take Baylor. I'm throwing it out there. I'm going to take Baylor. First of all, both teams are great defensively, so I think it will be a lower scoring game. I will take Baylor to win this basketball game 68-67. That is my final score prediction. I think it comes down to the final possession. Gonzaga's got the ball in the hands of Jalen Suggs, and Baylor gets a stop at the end. Davion Mitchell, I know some people's got mixed up with Donovan Mitchell because same last name, and they both wear number 45. And they both have similar games. Davion Mitchell is crazy athletic. Does that transfer to the pro game? I mean, we've seen with Westbrook and Wall and Derrick Rose, it contributes to highlights, not necessarily to winning. But at Baylor in college, it'll contribute to winning. And Davion Mitchell is their best player. And I think it's fitting, by the way, that these two teams are meeting in the national championship, and here's why. Last year, before the season was canceled due to COVID, Baylor was the best team in America. Baylor was the number one team. They were going to be the number one overall seed in last year's tournament. But, of course, there was no tournament last year because of the pandemic. And then this year, Gonzaga has been the best team throughout the year. So it's fitting. It's like Baylor didn't get a shot to go after a national championship last year, even though they were the best team. But last year's best team and this year's best team go head-to-head. I think it's fitting. I haven't heard anybody bring that up, but I think it's something worth noting. So with all that said, I'm going to take Baylor to win 68-67. Again, there's no way. There's no way it's going to top what happened between Gonzaga and UCLA. There's no way. And something else that part of the reason I'm picking Baylor as well is I think emotionally Gonzaga has emptied the tank. Physically, I don't know. I mean, listen, at the end of the game, those guys looked tired. I mean, they looked shot. And I don't, if it goes to a second overtime, I think UCLA might have the advantage. But, of course, Jalen Suggs saved their bacon at the buzzer with a bank-in three. But I think emotionally, because of how intense that game was against UCLA, I think UCLA took the life out of Gonzaga. They're going to play hard. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be nip and tuck. It's going to be an exciting basketball game. But I think the fact that Baylor's dominated the tournament. I mean, again, last round I took Houston to beat Baylor, and that game was over in 5 minutes. I mean, it was good night. Can't wait for the game tonight. Of course, we all know the great Jim Nantz will be on the call, along with Grant Hill as well. It's going to be an outstanding game, I believe. There's no way it tops the Final Four. There's no way. However, I still think, listen, if that's the standard for a great college basketball game, then we're not going to have very many college basketball games the rest of our life because that game was just insane. But I think we're in for a great one tonight. It comes down to the last possession. I will take Baylor to beat Gonzaga by a single point, 68-67, to win the national championship game. I believe they haven't done it since the 1940s. So it's been a minute for Baylor in bringing one of these championships home. And Gonzaga does not finish undefeated. I got to be honest, I'm rooting for Gonzaga. I'm rooting for Mark Few. He's a good dude. He's a great coach. Jalen Suggs is a great kid. So is Drew Timme. I mean, that's just really guys on that team easy to root for. And again, Gonzaga's never won it. Again, Baylor has won it, but it was back in the 40s. So it's been a minute for Baylor, and it's never happened for Gonzaga. I'm rooting for Gonzaga, but I'm going to take Baylor to win the game by a single point to win the big dance. It has been an incredible tournament. It is not, it's surpassed my expectations. It was so good to have the tournament after not having it last year. Can't wait for it. Got Baylor tonight. Think it's going to be an outstanding basketball game. So with that said, by the way, go check out my interview with Dr. John Deloney. I uploaded it this morning at 7 a.m. We talked about mental health, which is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, very important to me. And this guy's an expert in it. And so Dr. John Deloney, interviewed him last week, uploaded the episode today. So go check it out wherever you listen to your podcast. So I hope everybody has a great week. Enjoy the game tonight. It tips off, by the way, at 9:20 Eastern, 6:20 Pacific time on CBS. So enjoy the game. Hope to see y'all Thursday live, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube and Twitter. Hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe. God bless you all. Peace out.